everyone. Welcome to the Psychology and Spirituality Bridge to Better Life discussion. During our weekly talks, we explore this intersection between spirituality and psychology. And as a result, we often capture timeless wisdom contained in both fields. I'm your host, Marcia Trajano, and I am so excited to have Anne Sinclair with me. Anne, how you doing? It's been a while since we last talked, right?
Yes, hi, I'm doing fine. And thank you so much for inviting me and feel really honored to be able to have these moments of conversation despite my very limited knowledge.
Anne is the most humble person I've ever met, and it's just such a pleasure to be here with you. But today, Anne, I would like for us to talk about the idea of losing oneself, losing yourself, and then finding yourself later. So that's the movement of almost two directions, right? There's a road that you go, and then upon your return, there's some gains in doing that. And you may say, no, it's a waste of time. No, not really. And I just wanted to maybe, for the sake of our conversation, and let us perhaps just you and I imagine being on a journey. Okay, so it's no longer on a road, but just a journey, a trip, and we're there to search a treasure. This seems like more of a Hollywood movie, but let's take this world of imagination that we have at our feet, right? And we are there in this journey. We're searching for treasure, and we are so committed to this journey because we believe that physical object, the treasure, is something that we have to possess in order to feel complete, right? But I'm actually referencing here the book by Paulo Coelho, The Alchemist. It's Paulo Coelho is a Brazilian writer, and he wrote this book that became a bestseller, and it's written many different languages, including English. The Alchemist. And Santiago, he does the protagonist in this tale. It's fiction, everyone, right? But it's the protagonist in this tale of search for this treasure. And Santiago, I don't know if you remember reading the book or, or the narrative, but Santiago, he sets out in this in this journey, and he very soon finds that the treasure that he's looking for is actually not buried in the sands of Egypt, right? It's very, in my imagination, very mythical journey. But he finds that the treasure is buried with himself. But let's think about along the way, looking for the treasure in the sands of Egypt, he loses everything that he thought at some point he needed. He lost his sheep, he lost his fortune, and every time he lost something, that brought him closer to understand his real need. Remember, he thought that he needed that, right? He needed that to feel complete. But the more he loses, the more he gets closer to understand his authentic self, his true purpose in life. So let's think about it. Today's episode, let's explore how sometimes all of us, in order to find that sense of being whole again, to be fulfilled, to referencing a favorite word of Joanna de Angelis, right? Reaching plenitude, we must first and foremost lose ourselves, and by doing that, we start in this real path, which is shedding the layers of illusion, shedding all of that is actually, we hold on to it, right? But they prevent us from realizing our most authentic selves. So, Ed, Are you ready? I'm going to ask you a question for us to engage in a conversation. What does it mean, Anne, to lose oneself? Before we even go any deeper, what for you, what comes to your mind when I say let's lose ourselves so that we, in the process of self discovery, right, you must lose that part of yourself. And why? So, two questions. Right? Why is this loss often necessary for us to grow?
Okay, so I will probably want to start to give some ideas of my understanding, and this is a topic that you can interpret it on so many different ways, on so many different levels.
Yeah.
And so, if I start off thinking of a child, little toddler, I have
Mhm.
one. My granddaughter, she's coming up to 2, an
Mhm.
age in which you learn to say no, and you
Yeah.
start to detach from your mother, and you start to assert your independence and your personality, but still, of course, you're completely dependent on your parents for
Mhm.
everything. But you start to think that actually you know how to do everything by yourself. I can
Yes.
do it. And as a parent or grandparent, we want to encourage that little child to do things by themselves
Yeah.
because they need to learn so that they
Yeah.
can function by themselves. And it's a balancing act of protecting them and giving them space to experiment, to try to do it and get it wrong, so they can
Yeah.
learn how not to do it, and so on. So these
And
images,
real quickly, sorry to interrupt you, but I'm just thinking out loud here as you're talking. The your grandchild, right? The here. I don't know if you say that in Britain, but here in the U.S. we often call that stage of life the terrible twos, right? And when you start studying the psychosocial development of a young child to adolescence, etc., the terrible twos is super super critical because it's exactly the time that you start to assert your identity versus the role confusion between who am I. Up until then I am mom, right? We are mom and baby are one, and then after that, the terrible twos, the asserting themselves, the saying no, it's because it's no longer. So it's that creation of identity is so critical right at the juncture. But go right ahead.
yeah. So that just brings me like the when I observe things in the material world, it makes it
Mhm.
easier for me to understand things of a psychological nature because
Mhm.
I am still quite materialistic. So I that's why I like to reference things that I can see and I can experience, because
Mhm.
then I go, aha, I kind of get it,
Mhm.
and go slowly doing my own construct. So how did I come to be how I am? I started off on a journey like all of us, and we went through our, I think, the terrible twos. We also say terrible twos here as well. It's
Oh,
a bit of a
good, good.
it's a bit of a bad word because it's not terrible. Actually, it's really exciting that it's such
Yes.
a strong development point. But of course, as a child starts developing and asserting their own independence, that creates conflict. Because they don't want to
Yeah.
follow the rules, they want to do their own thing, and so on. And then, of course, we have a repetition of that kind of very strong phase in adolescence,
Absolutely.
where
Yeah.
again there's a strong impetus that is almost guided by the hormones and by biology to assert an independence, to say I'm becoming a fully grown human, and I have my will and I have my choices, and I want this and I don't want that, and I might
Mhm.
start to reject what my parents gave me, what education they provided, and say, I refute the culture that was provided for me. All kinds
Yeah.
of conflicts like that can happen. And
And
then,
and and even that, right? If I may add to it, from that adolescent perspective or viewpoint, it's super important, super critical because that's when we reach our adolescent years, we assert our identity, as you said, but also we need to break away from that. Think in terms, right? It's your your egoic construct that has become stronger, right? But also, you start to create personas that may not be the persona that was given to you by your family, your culture, etc. Right? So for me, that breaking away, if you will, if I may call that, is when you really start to create or have a sense of what is your true north, right?
Mm.
So it's about values. It's about your belief system that is, becoming one that is maybe sedimented at that point. It is maybe desires, right? And those all of that, I call it the soup, right? The soup of things that you start to pay attention as a teenager. They may be found, or most of them are found outside of the families, or even the context, the societal context and the expectations, right? But it is important, and it's essential, it's even critical for the attainment perhaps of that strong and autonomous even identity, right?
Mhm. And also, if you consider, like, in the Spiritist teachings, well, some of the fundamentals is that we are eternal beings and that we have
Yeah.
many incarnations. And so we bring history, we
Yes.
bring past habits, we bring all kinds of stuff with us. And at the phase of adolescence, that becomes more pronounced. It's almost like woken up in us because we've already had the opportunity of that initial sort of input from the local culture of our family, a situation at the moment, to try and change things. And then that eclosion comes in, just to add to your soup, if you like, that those elements. So there's a lot of things going on. And
Mhm.
so we're thinking about that's adolescence. And then this happens again in early adulthood. So for different people, I mean, it might be a different story, but just if we're just imagining we're looking at a traditional human being going through all these processes, and then the person grows into a young adult and then perhaps leaves home, like in the hero's quest, like in the
Yes.
alchemist's journey. And the
Yeah.
person goes out, and talking first, let's say, on the material level of what we can see and observe. And the person goes out into the world to conquer their place, to conquer a career, a job, a family, establish their way of thinking. And now I can do things my way, and I'm going to obtain this. But and all this goes along till you come to your middle ages, when again you have a strong impulse, also guided by biology, to stop and look back and say, review your life. And that's why you call midlife crisis.
I love it. I love that midlife
I,
crisis.
so people are changing careers, they buy a
Yes.
sports car, they're getting a new family, all kinds of things, because they, oh, well, I got it all wrong, I want to do it again, and so on. So we
Mhm.
are observing these are things on a material level, if you like, of
Mhm.
observation. And we are all doing, in some way or another, this kind of journey each time that we incarnate. So, what is it to lose ourselves? If we think that at each one of those stages, we might be losing something, because in order to, an idea came to mind just now. It's like, some insects, when they
Mhm.
grow, they need to lose their covering. It cracks and breaks so that they can get a bigger covering. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Those, I'm trying to
Yeah.
remember the name, like in some insects and things like that, or even like, let's say, uh, in snakes and things, they lose the skin to grow a
Yeah.
new skin.
The
So
most amazing one, by the way, is the crab, right? Why? Because it's a hard shell, like you can
yeah,
touch it. And I don't know if you've seen any of their videos or documentaries about when it's time for them to grow, they go through this very painful, painful process of moving outside of that shell, just letting go. And to do this, which is amazing to me, they become extremely vulnerable because the hard shell that has, let's say,
Yeah.
size X, and they're not going for a size XX. Just a reference here from my mind, right? But that animal becomes extremely vulnerable to be eaten by any sorts of predator, whereas it was before. So that sense of vulnerability is quite symbolic if you think about it, right? When we break
100%.
away, right, the baby at age 2, when the baby says no, it's the conflict, right? It's creating some harshness between the mommy, the all-loving mommy, and the baby. Like, how am I going to handle that? Or the teenager that all of us were once, every time we said no, that I want to go my way, we were actually becoming vulnerable to any, I'm going to use the word predatorial, but that's not what I mean, but any predatorial external event, because we're not completely formed yet, right? We,
Yeah.
we, we don't know what to do, but those are the growing pains, if you will, of losing your earlier persona to become ready for the new persona, and
Yeah.
so on and so forth, many times, including after midlife. I'm going to my I would say my third midlife crisis at my current age. I'm like, oh, what have I done with life? Who am I? And that's that deconstructing all of my truths, and how do
Yeah.
you manage that, right? How do you truly become loving and gentle toward myself, like the crab, right? I'm vulnerable, but at the same time, with the courage of leaving, get ready to become bigger, larger, stronger,
Yeah.
even.
And this is like, when we go through this, the word you use, I think courage is a really
Yeah,
important one, because you
yes,
have to be willing to let go of what you know about yourself, about who
yeah,
you are, about where you
yeah,
fit in the world, or what's
yeah,
expected of you, or what your culture, your environment, whatever is decided
yeah,
is the way you need to go. And
yeah,
you go out to experiment, to chuck that all away and say, no, I'm going to do things differently. But you have no idea how this is going to turn out. It might be
yes.
good, it might not be good. You might waste
Well,
your time, inverted commas, in doing things that then afterwards you regret. But the important thing, that when you look at this of losing yourself, is a sense, it's not like a negative, or
mhm,
I don't see it as a negative. I think it's, you need to release yourself of those, of that which defines you in a way, so that you can then look and
yeah,
say, well, what do I actually want? You know?
yeah. You making me think about, and it's completely different thought process here, but it just came to my mind, if you don't mind. And but you know, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross in late 60s, she published a book on death and dying,
Hmm.
and it just amazing book. I recently read it, by the way, and what is so funny is that at work, my professional life as a project manager, nothing to do with psychology or anything, but as a project manager, I teach the theory of change management, right? So just project management, change management, they're two practices that go hand in hand. But in teaching change management, we talk about the cyclical, right? The It's not a very linear process with the cycles that we have to go through to accept change. And
Hmm.
one of the things that Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, referencing the dying, the terminal patient when she was doing that, but we all go through that, no matter
Yeah.
what. You mentioned earlier, and when we, I don't know, either midlife crisis, but it could be maybe I'm getting married, or I'm buying a
Yeah.
new house, or I'm going to college and I'm leaving my family home for the first time and going to live in a dorm. I may be getting married. I mean, there's so many examples in life itself that we lose ourselves, the earlier identity that we
Yeah.
were, to become something else. And we go through the stressors of that change curve, that is the same curve that Kubler-Ross uh, gave it to us in her book on death and dying. So I think it's important for us to think about losing yourself from that context, right?
Yeah.
The pregnant woman, upon the birth of the child, is no longer pregnant, right? So it
Yeah.
loses that protective, the baby's here and I can manage, I can control somewhat the health of the baby, to now the
You
baby's
know,
out, right? So on
yeah.
and so forth. Go ahead.
No, I said because that's my background is I'm a midwife, and
Yes,
what we say is that at the birth of the baby, the pregnant woman dies and the
yes,
mother is born,
yes,
and that's why it's a loss
yeah,
and again. So it is
yes,
exactly the same kind of transformation.
yeah,
So the thing that is really interesting is that sometimes we might be self motivated, let's say, to go ahead and explore and change and do things
mhm,
differently and want to do this. Other times we might not be very motivated and stay at home
yeah,
and stay in our safe space and perhaps avoid the dangers or the risk and play pretty, if you like,
yeah,
and pretend that we are goody two shoes. But in fact, actually, sometimes it might be we're lacking the courage actually to go out there and face the loss. So the words like to lose yourself, sometimes it can be like, oh, you've gone down a hole into negativity, to addiction, you lost yourself, everything that was good, you threw it away. Like
mhm,
a lot of sort of guilt and accusations can come from that.
absolutely, yeah,
But
absolutely,
what we see is that in nature, in God's creation, which is all nature,
yeah,
you have to face the changes, and
yeah,
it's all leading in one way. It's like the spirit saying, the spirit's book, in the law of progress is unavoidable. We will all
yeah,
progress whether we like it or not. We can help ourselves and align ourselves with the current of progress, or
yeah,
we can go fighting, but the current of progress will still take us forwards.
yeah,
So when you think about losing ourselves, sometimes it can be painful because we are vulnerable, as you said, and
yeah,
maybe we threw everything away of what was seemed to be established for us, and we
yeah,
decided to do things differently, and actually it didn't turn out okay. It wasn't nice, it was
yeah,
painful, it was a dark place for us, it was a place where we did not find happiness, it could have been a place where we didn't find satisfaction. And like in the parable of the prodigal son, we
yeah,
found hunger and humiliation,
yeah,
found bad things. And that's okay, because it's we're going through the journey. It's about
yeah,
how we interpret what that means and not to be judging.
yeah.
uh,
But the parable of prodigal son, if I may, because we talked about it for several episodes now, and and one of the things that I love about Joanna de Angelis analysis of that parable, right, is how it's a parable of two sons, right? It's two
yeah.
sons, not just the prodigal son, but the son that stayed. And
Mhm.
what I find it really remarkable about it's really timeless, right? The parable, it
Mhm.
speaks about me and you and all of us here today. But it is a question of the shadow that each son had. And in order for the prodigal son, the youngest child, to claim, symbolically speaking, the death of the father, right? By
Mm.
getting his inheritance, it's his shadow, right? He is honoring that part of himself that most of us would perhaps repress. No, I don't want my father to die. I will wait, but there's a part of me that wants to explore, that wants to lose myself, not lose myself, but go and explore the world, right? Fight and become what you think is like, oh, I'm not part of the father, I am myself, let me try and explore. The other son, the older son, his shadow and is quite repressed, right?
Mm.
Which is actually jealousy. And you know what they say, jealousy in psychological terms, it just simply means that you project what you would have aspired to do, but you never had courage. Again, back to the word courage. You never had the courage to break, to create the conflict and pursue what you thought was impossible. Impossible not to live without, right? That it was really impossible to live without to live without it, right? And so from that perspective, if you think about it, losing oneself, if you put from Joanna's and Jungian perspective, it is facing the shadow, right? And bringing them up. I'm going to lose my prior identity of what did you say? The goody two shoes, right? The child, the child that was so obedient and accepted. And I'm talking about the prodigal son. And I am now going to face, and I'm going to bring it up. And by bringing it up, as vulnerable as we are shedding light to what was once um, repressed and in the shadow. And this is really, really important because it was that losing yourself, losing the son that was obedient to becoming the son that goes away and then comes back as the son that I understood that he needed to now a truer to himself, the real son, right? Recognize the love of the father, etc., etc. And I love, if you think about it, what the prodigal son in this case has done is he is moving away, he's shedding behind anything that was a conditioned persona that he inherited, culturally speaking, from that family, right? They were both very wealthy, right? And he, in order to shed, and he went out, of course he had an inheritance, so he didn't go as bad as we would think, but he faced the shadow and he lost everything, and then he was able to decide to honor who he was. Does it make sense what I'm saying? I'm not sure
Yeah.
if I'm being clear here.
But I think it also, because to lose yourself and then to find yourself, it goes like
Yeah,
that, hand in hand.
yeah,
In order to lose yourself, to find yourself, is to be able to, in a way, be free.
yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely. I think
By being,
this is the biggest information we can talk today for ourselves, and it's you lose yourself and you have room to grow, like the crab or the snake or whatever else. But that's when you truly become free, right?
and then it's also is because, let's say, the fear of the shadow, or the fear of all those things that you repress because they
Yeah,
don't fit in the context where you,
yeah,
how you were educated and brought up and everything. You don't know what to do with it, so you just repress it because it's no good, no good. But it
mhm,
haunts you because you carry it with you. Uh,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
like, like people joke, you can change countries, as we all know, move countries. But
yeah.
you can take your suitcase, and they say there's two things going in your suitcase. It goes your karma and your shadow. You're not escaping from them. You're taking them in your luggage.
I love it. I love it. And I did that, right? I moved away at an early young age of 20 from my home country, and all that was my identity, my family, all of it, and came to the US, and I've lived here for the majority of my life. But it's interesting if we talk about going back to freedom. Jean-Paul Sartre, in, yeah, I don't know if you know him. He's a philosopher that really brought to us existentialism. But he has an interesting book, I believe it was Bad Faith, right? That he talks about this inherited tendency of all of us to conform to societal and familiar expectations, right?
And I,
Why do we do this? Why? Because we are biosocial animals, but we have this innate sense of, I want to belong. Go ahead, Anne.
yeah, no, not only we want to belong, but we also have a biological impulse
Mhm.
to use the least energy
There you
because that is
go.
a
Yeah.
survival mechanism. So if
Mhm.
we're not fighting others and we are conforming and fitting in the group, we are
Yeah.
preserving our energy and we are more likely to survive. So it is
Yeah.
like we don't even realize that, but it's a biological impulse of
Yeah.
survival.
That herd mentality, right? So let me be with
Mm,
my peeps, and they'll help
yeah.
me not to be eaten by the tiger or the lion here, the
So
lioness, I
one
guess.
of the things it says when you
Uh,
lose yourself and to
uh-huh.
find yourself, one of the things that Joanna de Angelis talks about is
Yeah.
about having self-awareness. And
Yes. Yes.
this is like one of the big questions, like, who am I? What am I doing here on this planet?
Hmm.
Yeah, I can plan my job, my family, all these kind of things, but essentially, who am I?
Yeah.
And to have that realization that we are eternal spirits having an experience in matter,
Yeah.
that we are divine by
Yeah.
provenance, we are
Yeah.
God's children,
Yeah.
and that God, that word I know can be triggering for some people, but it can, like the universe, the greater force, the first intelligence,
The
that is
source. The
the source,
source. The Father. Yes.
source, the father of everything, is a loving source, and we are
Yes.
part of it. So sometimes when we get caught up in our material lives, we are so worried about our material lives that we kind of forget about our spiritual side, but
Hmm.
we ignore it just like we ignore our shadow
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
unconscious. You know what I mean? So we don't have that fullness understanding of ourselves, that complete understanding of ourselves.
Yeah.
And you can't impose this on other people. This is an individual journey that each one of us does. And I think that as we go through our many incarnations, each time, we come back, if we've advanced at a certain level of our understanding, we've moved along a little bit. So we don't start right at the beginning, although our bodies start right at the beginning and do the whole journey. Our
Hmm.
spiritual being, our essence, whom we really are, can already start a little bit further along, a little bit, and we just go building on what we've built before. So for some people, this might be like, what are you talking about? This is
Yes.
like nothing to do. And other people might be saying, well, of course, because, it's all about energy and spirit and things. So we're all in different places on our journey. And
Yeah.
the place where we are is the right place
Yeah.
for us.
Yeah. And
There is no wrong address.
yeah, so we talked a lot maybe and on disruptions and conflicts and leaving to find yourself, right?
Mm.
Can we maybe talk a little bit about the return, right?
Let's talk
And
about
and
the return.
yeah,
Yes.
what I was really thinking about is what is the place, the role of inner discovery, that self discovery, and what are maybe the steps that we can take to start to reconnect with ourselves, our true selves, right? And we mentioned the phase of the terrible twos, adolescence, and young adulthood, and went all the way to midlife crisis. But I mean, I don't know where I am, but my age, you may know, and but uh, it doesn't matter if I am 15 or 35 or 70. How can I understand the steps to reconnect with, if not my true self, the true self that I should be? Does this make sense to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you think like as we are living an incarnation, we're living in matter, that does
Yeah.
occupy a lot of our time, either by
Yes.
a biological impulse, by a cultural impositions, by whatever. But
Mm-hmm.
we are not just this wonderful machine of flesh. We are
Yes.
more than that. And how do we get to know that? Sometimes we go on the outside in a journey so that we get to know the outside. So I get to know the material world in
Mm-hmm.
some way. But then
Mm-hmm.
the journey back is a journey inward.
Yeah. Yeah.
What, and even things like, what do I actually feel? And how, even things like, I do this exercise now, which I find quite amazing. You know, what makes me happy? What makes me suffer?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when let's say something happens and I get annoyed and I
Yeah.
think, oh, like I'm not happy and I
Yeah.
get frustrated, but I pretend it's all, you know, I'm very
Uh-huh.
polite. No, congratulations, that's wrong. And it's me. And then I take that, I go, haha, stop. I say, okay, I can see that I'm having this negative feeling that I'm trying to hide, that I'm quickly pushing aside because it's not acceptable. But this is telling me something about me, not to
Yes.
judge myself, but to say there's something here that I'm not in my inner being is not okay with this. Why am I
Yeah.
not okay with this? What is it
Yeah.
triggering? So
Yes.
it's just coming to get to know yourself little by little by observing yourself, observing what makes you happy, what makes you sad, what makes you annoyed, what makes you irritated. And so, like, say, even if you're in the queue for, I don't know, the queue in the bank, and you've only got half
Yes.
an hour, and you know, people aren't moving, and you come on, come on, come on, bunch are not moving. That's my, I need my
Yeah.
turn, I need my turn. And then you go like, why am I behaving like this?
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
What is it in me that makes me so anxious, that I'm worried that I'm not going to have my chance? And it's just like bring it back to like I'm an eternal being, a being of
Yes.
light and God's child.
Yeah.
So I'm here now, and it's just like you can make any little situation into a really interesting learning opportunity for yourself, about
Yes.
yourself.
Yes.
And you can then start realizing, what do you want to adjust that might
Yes.
make you be happier more often or for longer, or how
Yeah.
can you understand the suffering of others? It's
Yeah.
just like so much. It's a
Yeah.
completely new world that you can delve into. I know
Uh-huh.
lots of people say, oh, you can do meditation and things like that. If you don't have the habit of meditation, it will take a while to develop that, because our chatty brain chats a
Yes.
lot. It's very
Yes.
difficult to make
We
it
we're
quiet.
we're chatterbox, right? We just we can't stop
So
and
it's just
make
like calm
silence. Yeah.
down and just like
Yeah.
bringing it back to, I even like the spirits would say like, oh, like every day, like think about what you've done, haven't done in this day, what you might want to have done
Yeah.
differently.
Hmm.
But I go to something further on that I can't remember who said it, but say when you put your head on the pillow at night and you go to sleep,
Yeah.
you don't know if you will wake up in the morning.
That's right.
None of
That's
us
right.
do.
Yeah.
Most of us do, but none of us know for sure. And
Yeah.
if I were not to come back to my body in the morning, would I be okay? Would I be
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
And that just brings me very nicely onto something that you're talking about, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross,
Yes.
and issues about dying and what causes people to have difficulty in dying. And I'd say, and the research that they've done, and there's like nurses in Brazil, but they've also done here in many
Yeah.
places, talk about unresolved personal issues,
Yes.
relationships,
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
unresolved, fights, arguments,
Yeah.
saying forgiveness, these kind of things about relationships. Isn't very rarely is it about the material things.
Yeah.
It's usually
I
about the personal things.
yeah, I want to maybe bring to us here because you talk about forgiveness, right? Um, I don't know if you know about Viktor Frankl, but he
Yeah.
is just an amazing figure, and he psychiatrist, right? His background, but most important, what makes him unique is that he was a Holocaust survivor. But while in the concentration camp, he had some experiences, very painful, and then he wrote about them in the book Men's Search for Meaning. And
Mm,
Viktor Frankl, he brought to us the idea, the argument that suffering, right, can lead to a deeper sense of purpose. And most people go like, what is, are you, is this an apology for suffering? But what he talks about is that if one can find meaning in suffering, you get that deeper sense of purpose, which is the return home, right?
yeah.
And he uses his own experience and to, like he lost his family, he endured horrifying, unthinkable levels of pain. But he kept thinking, even the most difficult, painful, horrific context or circumstances, we can choose how you're going to respond. And that's his major. I can even, I'm putting my hands like this because I can see like a seesaw, right? We have a pivot
Mhm.
point at the bottom and a plank. And you can say, I'm going to choose to go down or go up in the seesaw of external events that come to our mind and to our lives. And then it is really a personal choice on how to respond to suffering. But he brought that key example um, of how suffering and how loss can be that catalyst for our growth, right? And I think if you think about it, in his work, he also brings the idea of healing and the power of forgiveness, right? So
Mm.
if you go into his stories, and he wrote a lot, and he created the field of logotherapy, right, which is all about therapy through symbols. But many of his personal stories include that element of forgiveness after going through the pain, right? And so I think if we were to say, what is Viktor Frankl teaching us? He's teaching us that forgiveness is not just letting go of your resentment, but it's really this extremely and powerful way to transform your pain that you're going through into compassion and into growth, right? And I love that idea to for all of us maybe to think about how the stories of anybody going through trauma or personal tragedy, how they, as survivors, they become the most powerful stories is when they become those advocates for forgiveness and healing, right? And we can talk about many, many examples that come to my mind now, but it's really what you're saying. The forgiveness is one of the most powerful instrument for our own transformation.
And I like just to add there is self-forgiveness,
Yes, yes,
because
yes.
we are the hardest
Mhm.
judges on
Yeah,
ourselves.
yeah, 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 yeah,
So we need to uh, embrace ourselves as well, to love ourselves,
yeah,
accept
yeah,
that we make mistakes, that we make wrong choices, or make choices that have consequences that are not the ones that we wanted. uh, and it's okay, because we are on a journey of learning, of discovery, and coming back. Let's say we've gone out, we've lost ourselves, we've let go of everything we've had, and we've come back free and recognizing our position. So I think that sometimes we suffer because we imagine ourselves to be, let's say, in a situation which is not real. We
yeah,
have a fantasy, and when our
yes,
fantasy breaks, we suffer
yes,
because we thought, oh, I thought I could do that. I thought I could endure that, but I was mistaken. about where I actually was. That's really tough, that self-knowledge, and to realize. And you know that in the spiritist teachings, the spirits say that we're in a world of tests and atonements. That means it's a world where we are all sort of toddlers, inverted commas, except for those who are our teachers and the more advanced. So
Yeah.
it is a world where difficult things happen. But if we're here, it's because this is our level. If not, we'd be somewhere else. It's tough. It's tough. It's tough. And it's
It's
not to
tough,
put
but
ourselves
it's
down.
not unattainable, right? We are
You
where we
know,
need to be. Yeah.
the toddler will grow up. The
Yeah.
adolescent will grow up. We will also grow up. And if we are toddlers, we can't expect ourselves to be doing what we can't do yet. Our parents, our father knows exactly where we are. It's that sometimes like we are like a toddler saying, I can do it, thinking I can jump in the car and drive it and my little legs don't reach the. I can't see. But sometimes, spiritually speaking, we can be a little bit like that sometimes. That we
Yeah.
think we can do it because we've got some level of freedom and things, and we get all excited, and actually we don't see ourselves for the level that we actually are. And it's not like we are bad. It's just that we are young.
Mhm.
We are
Yeah.
growing,
Yeah.
still on our pathway,
Yeah.
which
I love
reminds me.
that. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted like I'm just worrying about the time, but when you're talking about it, I had picked out, funnily enough, here from Joanna de Angelis, when I was reading about suffering, and
Yeah.
because when you talk about suffering, I can't talk about the suffering of anybody else because suffering is a completely individual process
Yes.
experience. So something that might make me suffer immensely might not make you suffer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean that you're good and I'm bad. It means that whatever that suffering for me is touching something in me that is making it really painful and difficult. And maybe you've already come to a way of dealing with that it doesn't make you suffer so much. And that's great. But then there'll be something else the other way around. So that's why
Yeah.
we can't compare ourselves with others in that sense. But we just need to look and say, okay, this makes me suffer, and what am I going to do about it? But Joanna de Angelis, she makes this beautiful metaphor, and she says that love is the great river where suffering will drown, because the current of love is so strong that no suffering can fight that current. So just this image of this river of love that takes suffering away, it carries it away in its force, in its current, in its strength. I know that we have difficulties with the word love because it means so many different things, but we slowly go learning about love. And if we can transform those things that hurt us into love in some way,
Yeah.
we chuck that suffering into that river and it will take it away. I love this image because I like metaphors. They speak
Yes.
to they speak to me. So
Uh-huh.
I just wanted to share that because I thought when I read it, it really touched me. And when
Awesome.
you're thinking you're suffering or your difficulties, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Is like, don't focus on the suffering, focus on the river of love that will
Yes.
wash the suffering away.
And that's a gift that Joanna de Angelis is giving to all of us here today with this metaphor, this image. And you are right, we are at time. And I just want to say to all of us, as we're talking about this idea of losing ourselves, right? In self discovery, think about it. The journey is one that you lose yourself, but it's a journey of self discovery. And it is really not about a permanent loss, but rather this essential stage of our transformation. Think the baby, think the crab, think whatever, right? It's just this stage that requires us for us to grow. And if you think about it from a psychological perspective, it is all about breaking free from our constraints. And those constraints may be, I don't know, those imposed by my family, those imposed by my society, or even those imposed by my own ego, right? So we need to lose ourselves when we break free, and the breaking free is often full of elements of pain, right, and vulnerability. But as we go through, then we can explore and start to embrace who we truly are, our authentic self. So, just as a in conclusion here, Anne, I think that this idea, this loss, though often, oh, I can't speak today, this loss, which is often uncomfortable, right? It can even be disorienting for some. Those losses are necessary for our own growth because it would create a space for us to emerge more whole, more integrated, and aligned with our true essence. So when we explore this theme today from I can see philosophical, psychological, and even spiritual perspective, we can see that the idea of losing and finding yourself again reveals that it, loss is not inherently negative, right? It is a catalyst for our deeper understanding and our true sense of personal fulfillment. But with that, I want to say, Anne, I really appreciate you being here. And to all of you who are here with us today, if this is the first time you listen to a program, please take a note that the psychology and spirituality weekly talks are based on the works by Joanna de Angelis, and we're here to kind of juxtapose those concepts from a spirituality and a psychological lens so we can unpack them easier, better, more accessible. Thank you so much, Anne, and thank all of our sponsors, Mansão do Caminho, the United States Spiritist Federation, the International Spiritist Council, and AMI Brazil, the Brazilian arm of the Medical Spiritist Association. We'll be back next episode, so please stay tuned and goodbye, everyone.
Right.